Today, we're going to be talking about interpersonal relationships for student organizations. So to start off, let's define what is an interpersonal relationship. So interpersonal relationships are the connections and interactions between members within a student club or organization as they work towards a shared goal or shared goals. So in other words, it's how the students are going to relate to another within the context of their student organization. And interpersonal relationships are very important in student organizations because it can make or break conflict as well as productivity and being able to achieve your mission and goals. So we're going to think of interpersonal relationships through a framework developed by Tuckman called Tuckman's Model of Group Development. There are five main stages, which are forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. So we're going to walk through each of these stages and try to help tease out what the general expectations and behaviors of each of these stages is, that once you have a better understanding of these stages, you're going to be able to help your group work through them. Not necessarily a linear process or a direct cycle that's shown here. You might be jumping between different stages. So I guess to begin, we're going to start with the forming stage. So what is the forming stage? It's the beginning stage where those expectations, rules, and goals are going to be laid out. As an organization, you are likely in this stage. Some groups that might have existed but were not yet registered might not directly be in the same type of forming stage as groups that are completely brand new. However, everyone's still going to have some aspects of this forming stage as a new organization because it's still a new era for your group and a lot of new things are happening. So how do the members feel during the stage? There's generally some excitement, some eagerness, really excited about the mission and the goals that they're going to accomplish. People have very positive expectations and high hopes about these goals, but also there might be some underlying anxiety because it is a new situation. So what should you do in this stage? What type of behaviors are you expecting to see out of your members? So there's probably going to be a lot of questions, which you might not even know. Task accomplishment is generally low. That is because a lot of the focus is defining, okay, what is our organization? What does teamwork look like in it? What does our workflow look like? And also cliques may form. Now this is fine. It's pretty much inevitable. However, you should try to make sure that everyone's interacting with one another though. So there's no one that's going to feel left out or in some sort of out group without a clique. So what can you do in this stage? You should make sure that your mission and vision are clear. You should have specific, tangible objectives that are achievable. Define the roles and responsibilities, things like certain tasks and deliverables that are going to be due following weeks. Define the rules and expectations. So this also includes, you need to attend a certain number of club meetings. You are expected to work X amount of hours outside of this club, etc. Get to know one another. So since you're all very new to one another, it's often good to start doing some team building and icebreakers right away just to make sure that everyone can start off on a good foot. And then lastly, create a confident and positive atmosphere. If as a leader, you're not very confident, everyone's going to be even a little bit more anxious and on edge about this organization. So the next stage that you're going to start to move into once you start to establish your team in the forming stage is going to be the storming stage. So what is this storming stage? Storming stage is going to be the beginning of conflict on your team, where there's going to be a lack of role clarity and people are going to start to feel like your team is not living up to those high hopes that they had in the forming stage. And also their own personal hopes. And now this is likely going to be ramping up just as school stress is ramping up, especially in the context of a student organization. So there's going to be lots of emotions. So feelings of members, there might be some frustration, anger. They might be defensive about their roles on the team or sort of hoarding their tasks. There's probably going to be some resistance to tasks because they don't think it's worth their time with all the stresses of school. And there's going to be some confusion. There might also be some jealousy among members. So what type of behaviors are going to be carried out because of all these emotions in this stage? There's going to be power struggles. There's going to be relatively little progress towards achieving those goals and mission of your organization. There's going to be arguments. criticisms. People might be questioning the wisdom of both their team members as well as the leaders. And overall, there's going to be this increase in tension among all the team members, which is just not a great ideal environment for productivity and being able to accomplish those goals. So what can you as a leader do to help out in this storming stage? So one thing is effective listening. Everyone likes to be listened to, likes to sort of share their own story. So make sure that you're effectively listening and not just putting off listening to your team members. Make sure you're actually receiving that feedback from them. So among that, give and receive feedback. So both provide feedback to your team members and also receive feedback for yourself, because maybe the way that you're going about things just isn't working. You need to work on your conflict resolution skills. There's many methods to do this, but finding the strategy that works best for your organization is very much a personal preference. You're going to want to refocus your goals and purpose. Even if you came out of the gates all ready to go with goals in mind, they're likely to change, especially as you start to learn more about your team dynamics and who's on your team. So sort of refocus those goals and purpose, maybe redefine them. You should redefine them by making these digestible milestones. If you have a very lofty goal that seems not achievable, that's going to decrease morale among your group. So if you break that up into digestible milestones that are actually achievable, people are going to start to feel a sense of progress. And when people feel a sense of progress, they're going to feel more committed to your organization and actually feel like your goals are starting to be accomplished. And also in the stage, you should allow a little bit more of shared leadership to emerge. It shouldn't just be you're telling everyone in your organization what to do, but maybe allow others to take on roles. Now, this could be through things like committees and other things like that. It could also be through town halls and things. So once you start to work through that storming stage, through things like town halls, open forums, and having that shared leadership where team members might go to one another for help rather than everybody being mad at one another and blaming the leader, potentially, you're going to start to develop those effective listening skills, those conflict resolution skills, be able to give that constructive feedback, and you're going to get into this norming stage. So what is the norming stage? So there's going to be the resolution of the gap between those high expectations that were set out during the forming stage and the actual reality of your group. There's going to be meaningful communication between members. Conflict resolution. So those conflict resolution skills I was talking about, they're going to be able to use them so that people do feel comfortable expressing their opinions. However, they're not scared that they're going to have retribution. And you're going to start to really develop those team routines of, okay, we meet for 1 hour on Sundays, and this is a sort of general plan of what we follow. We do an icebreaker. We then all update each other on what we've been working on. We break into smaller teams and work on some stuff this week and then decide, okay, what's our plan going forward? What do we want to have done before next time that we meet? So how do members feel during the norming stage? There's generally starts to be some sense of trust and a sense of belonging. Members begin to feel more confident in their abilities as they're able to both contribute positively towards the team as well as feel confident that their opinions matter. And that sort of contributes to this psychological safety, which is the belief among all the team members or your group members that it's okay to take risks. You can express your ideas and concerns and not be scared, or admit mistakes even, and not be scared that you're going to have some sort of negative consequence like being kicked out or some retribution. So having this psychological safety among your student organization is really essential to making everybody feel comfortable and having trust among your team members, which is ultimately going to lead to a more productive group. So what behaviors do you expect to see in the norming stage based off all those emotions and what we've discussed so far? People are going to be expressing those true feelings. There is going to be better decision making occurring because people are able to present all their different opinions, which is very essential to making effective decisions. Not great to just go with the first idea that comes to mind. people are going to be able to give that effective feedback once again, sort of all leading to one another. All these things are intertwined where more feedback, better decision making. And people are going to be able to have potentially difficult conversations with one another where there are disagreements, which is also essential. There also might be some relationships between people that are not directly related to the group's goals, but more just, creating that sense of community among your student organization. So for instance, development of inside jokes, nicknames, things like that. And it's just going to be a very positive environment in that case because no one's really walking on eggshells anymore. And you're able to then shift your focus into your actual goals, leading to this increase in productivity and progress towards your mission and goals. So as a leader, what can you do? Continue to develop that decision-making process, maybe find a streamlined or organized way to make decisions among your group. You should use all your resources to support your team. So it's going more from that direct leadership approach to more of this shared leadership, as well as I just said, allowing members to take on that shared leadership where maybe you will have, some sort of subgroups within your student organization and that there is an individual leader for that subgroup. It also makes the burdens and the stresses as semester progresses less centralized on the leadership, which is going to make everyone's life a lot better as no one's taking on all of the weight of all the responsibilities of the club. So once we get through this forming stage, we start to gradually begin to go through this performing stage. And this stage is where really the entire organization is just flourishing. You're going to have great improvements, learning. Everybody starts to become aware of one another's strengths and weaknesses, and they will help each other out in areas where they know that another person might not be the strongest. So how do people feel? They're going to be confident, empathetic towards one another. They're going to be satisfied with their club. There's going to be collaboration. And then also there's going to be these tight bonds, fun and excitement, creating that community that a lot of people join student organizations for. So there's going to be clear, but however, also from fluid team roles. People are going to embrace differences. People are going to feel confident, feel like they know what they're doing. There's going to be team independence. So for instance, as I was saying, subcommittees or individual members might feel like they can do things without having to constantly ask questions or rely on others. Most of the team members are going to be very committed to the mission in this stage. So how can you help this out during the stage? Sort of, once again, just really taking that step back and helping the members deepen their skills, continue with the group development, as well as sort of just building those more personal bonds among team members through continued activities. Could be things like social activities that might be outside of directly your organization's goals, because as you develop better relationships among your team members, they're going to be able to work more effectively together. And also, you want to start to recognize people's accomplishments. No one really likes putting all this effort into tasks, especially for things like student organizations, and then not getting any recognition for it. So maybe just start to recognize your members at this stage. And as I mentioned, have a little bit of a less directed leadership approach. So once we start getting towards high performing, that's great. You might end up at this adjourning stage. This is very common in college environments because of the inevitable incoming freshman class and the leaving senior class, as well as potentially from project completion. So project completion or turnover of members could lead to this. So how might members be feeling during this stage? Your group members might be a little bit sad. There's going to be some uncertainty. There might be some change in leadership. There might be some bittersweetness occurring. However, there also might be some pride in people's accomplishments. In either case, both with project completion or that turnover of members as people graduate. So what are the behaviors and action items? So in terms of behaviors, you're likely going to see some sort of productivity drop as things are wrapping up. Additionally, there might start to become some crude humor because of the tight bonds that you've formed with your team members. So what can you do to help support your group during this time? Celebrate those that are leaving. Complete anything that needs to be finished because it's a bit hard once team members might be gone to really finish up projects. figure out what you really learned during this project individually or during that academic year to see how you can improve next year. You're never going to have a set method for doing things, and your group's goals might be changing over time, as well as how you run your group, depending on the individuals that are part of the group, as well as what just works best. And then turn your focus to the next project as well as recruitment, especially in the following fall, things like group fair, as well as tabling, and really just helping to get new members, both freshmen and other underclassmen or even upperclassmen involved in your organization. So how are you going to use all this knowledge that we just talked about and apply it to your group? So with this knowledge, there's one thing you can do, for instance, which is the Drucker exercise. So it's just a series of 4 questions, which are, what am I good at? How do I work? What do I value? How can I contribute? Now, these questions can help out at any stage of Tuckman's model that we just discussed. So for instance, if you're in the forming phase and you have your team members work through this exercise, it can help your team members just get to know each other better, help to start form those bonds and that community among team members. Another instance would be, for instance, in the storming stage. You can help reconcile what people are expecting in the group. So people might have very varied expectations coming in, and that's going to lead to some conflict during the storming stage. But by sort of just laying them out through exercises such as this, you can help to start that conflict resolution. And so just to sort of sum up, Tuckman's model consists of these 5 stages. Adjourning's not on that figure, but it is part of it as well. So you have that initial productivity during the forming stage. You start to have conflict and that productivity decreases. But then as you continue to work on skills like effective listening and conflict resolution, you go to that norming stage and then eventually to that performing stage where the group is doing great and really contributing to your goals. So overall, I hope that this was helpful in understanding interpersonal relationships within your student group, and that you might be able to use this idea of Tuckman's model to help out with your group this year.